Okay, I'm giving this a shot. I'm gonna try and use Georgia's frustration with faces to make this really rough video tutorial. So we're gonna try and work on Magnus 2. So the base that I'm gonna use for this is a mix between the Indian Shadow and the Pink Flesh, just to give you a really deep color to go with the shadows. You could do straight Indian flesh tone like that reddish brown, but I like to mix the two because I don't like my faces to go super deep, or at least I just like to highlight them more. So this is really just getting the color in all of the recesses, all of the deeper parts of his face. There's nothing fancy about this. The rule of thumb that I use when I'm painting in general, just when I approach any model, is that I always like to paint the deepest features first. So, and I'll come back to that when we start looking at some of the deeper features on Magnus, like his eyes and mouth. But getting that base down is, that's just the first part of this. It's pretty straightforward. Getting a little bit in his neck there because some of his neck is exposed. He's got ears on the side, so basically we're just mashing color to get his to get that base to show up really well on him. And of course this is pretty, I think everybody uses the skim milk consistency as a rule of thumb when it comes to thinning down paints. I don't like that for a lot of things. So for the base, it's just a little on the runny side. It's thin enough to where when this dries, it's going to dry evenly instead of drying all chunky and gross. So now the base is all put in there. So I think this is where I'm working on the eyes. And the reason why I work on the eyes now is that I can put the white on, or not, I don't even use white. I use a mixture of this really dark flesh tone that we're using plus white. And then what that does is it allows me to fix any mistakes right away because eyes are hard to do. So with that one, you could kind of see those were the eyes finished-ish. So this is, they stand out decently. You don't have to be super great with them because not a whole lot of people pay attention to them. Oftentimes when we put eyeballs in them. So that's the next thing we're doing now is using just that straight pink flesh tone, and we're going to just pick out a lot of the higher things. Like we're not mashing this color into all of his recesses. We're going to try and leave a lot of those behind. So we're covering a broad part of his features with this color. It's just that Magnus has a pretty animated face in general. There are some models that don't, but Magnus has, a strong forehead. He's got very raised cheekbones and sunken in jawline, and then his expression is pretty pronounced as well. And we just highlight a little tip of the ears. Like, it's not something that most people are going to notice or pay attention to, but I like to try and do as much as I can with my models. So on this side, I'm trying to approach him as more of you always got to think of where the light source is coming from, and a lot of models always look like it's high noon all the time. But with this, we're going to leave a little bit more on the dark side towards the back side of his face, towards his back there. So we just get a little bit of the ear, and then this is where we end up with highlighting, or not highlighting, but just putting down a coat on the parts that we need to. Some people, you could even stop here if you wanted to, if this is just good enough for you, but I like to take it up another notch, and we're just going straight with this basic flesh tone. And I don't want to get it runny all over the model, so I oftentimes use my thumb or my fingernail to smooth out some of the paint and pull my brush to a point. So here, we're really just going and coloring in, or painting in, less of an... So like on his forehead here, I'm just catching less, leaving some of the area, or leaving some of the paint behind that I'd used last time. So that way you have all three of those colors represented on that surface. So it's almost like this is your basic layering technique, except I'm being a little bit more granular than most people are. So we're just getting some of the high points on his face with this color. It does make it pop out quite a bit, and I think that this gets you to a really good point where when you have him on the table, you can see from not just from the 3 feet away, like the gate tabletop standard, but you can also see that when you look close, you've actually got some standing out features on him, and there's definitely some depth, and it just looks good. So I'm gonna take it up another notch, and this is just gonna be basic flesh plus this weird pale skin tone. Now this one, I don't want a whole lot on my brush, and I do want it on a pretty fine point because I am just kind of doing the strong lines of his face. This isn't necessarily edge highlighting, but it's kind of akin to it. So you can see I'm just using the point of my brush instead of more of the side of it, and we're just getting the very top of the features. I want this to happen because oftentimes on the table from a far distance away, sometimes layering doesn't quite work out for you. It kind of blends together too much. You're not able to discern all these really closely related colors. So by putting a really high tone on the very tips of the features, you can see this from, you know, a distance on the table. You can tell that, oh, yep, Magnus has some actual qualities to his face. You can just see things stand out a lot more, and it leaves you with a better looking model in my opinion. So now I'm going to even go further, and now I'm going to do a super highlight with this pale flesh tone. And this one I don't want a whole lot on there because I am going to pick out just a just a couple portions of his face. And this kind of meticulous highlighting is part of the first step to becoming a better painter, I think. I mean, it's not the first step, but like there are definitely steps when it comes to, like, when you do this, you have leveled up a little bit. And I think when you get to this, you know, I think we've used 5 different colors to do just a face. That's really, now you're getting into more of like a higher tabletop standard. So this is him finished on the skin, and I've attached a photo here that shows, I even painted his pupil. So now we got a better close look of what Magnus ends up turning out to be. Now you can see the character, and you can start to tease apart, like, this model isn't just a model, it's more relatable, I think, more like it's alive. It's got animation to it. So if you have any other questions, let me know, and I will do my best to answer them. If you like this kind of thing, I can try and make a few of these here and there just to see if people enjoy them. So I hope this helps, and happy painting, people.